Hello my friends, Takuya here, and oh my god do I have a wild story for all of you today. Now, on this channel we have spoken multiple times about corruption. It has been a fairly common subject. And simultaneously, we have also talked about China. Well my friends, today we're going to be talking about how China has been using its influence to run illegal operations and trafficking in foreign countries, and the man who they've installed in order to be in charge of the entire thing is a former triad boss. Yes, that is quite a lot to just dump on all of you in the beginning, but please stick around while we explain what exactly has been going on in the Golden Triangle, and I promise you, you will not be disappointed. In order to start today's story, let me go ahead and explain where all this is taking place in the first place. This is going to be a little bit of geography and simultaneously history. And the interesting thing about this is that not only is this important for the story that we're telling today, it is also important in order to understand the previous videos that I've made about Myanmar and its civil war, and simultaneously the future videos that I'm going to be doing on, like, the Taliban and how they rose to become drug lords themselves. Yes, I know that we're asking for pain from YouTube at this point, but hey, if you want to continue to support me, make sure to like this video and go ahead and place a comment down in the comment section below. Also, buy my coffee if you can. It's delicious. Because Lord knows I might not make anything otherwise. Anyway, to explain the Golden Triangle. The Golden Triangle is a vast mountainous region of around 77,000 square miles or 200,000 square kilometers. The area encompasses parts of northeastern Myanmar, northwestern Thailand, and northern Laos. In 1971, U.S. State Department official Marshall Green would first coin the term the Golden Triangle while speaking at a press conference on the opium trade, which is what this whole thing is going to be tied into. And that would prove to be very relevant because this area has been one of the largest producers of opium in the world since the 1950s. I know that I'm going to be talking about this when I do my video on the Taliban, but long before Afghanistan ever started writing fat checks that was based on the growth, harvesting, and processing of poppies into, well, the substance that YouTube does not like me to say, this region of Southeast Asia was infamous for producing some of the highest quality smack that money could buy. As an example, just a simple statistic right here, in the 1990s, 80% of all of the heroin that was sold in New York City came from the Golden Triangle. That's just where it was. To explain this further, opium and heroin produced in northeastern Myanmar are typically transported by horse and donkey caravans to refineries along the Thailand-Myanmar border for conversion into heroin and heroin base. Most of the finished products are then shipped across the border into various towns in northern Thailand and down into Bangkok for further distribution to international markets. For clarification of just how important this is, statistics-wise, by the year 1996, opiate exports out of Myanmar equaled all legal exports. Yes, my friends, you heard me right. The illegal exports were equal in number and value to the legal ones that came out of the country. That is how big of a trade we are talking about, and that is how insidious this is. But of course, that wasn't necessarily always going to be the case. Change would begin to occur, and this was actually positive change. But hey, my friends, before we get back to the podcast episode, I would just like to thank each and every one of you for listening, and I would also like to thank the sponsor for today's video/podcast from this, Rocket Money, which, my friends, for those of you who don't know what Rocket Money is, please allow me to explain. And I don't need any kind of fancy graphics or anything behind me, or a skip button that you can't actually skip here in the bottom, which, yeah, I saw the last time I did this, how annoyed a bunch of you were. Hear me out on this. Rocket Money is a service that will allow you to cancel subscriptions, it will lower your bills, it will track your spending, all in one place, and it is a fantastically easy thing to use. It is something that my family personally uses. I have used it for the last 2 years, and thanks to that, we've been able to catch a lot of different subscriptions that I, unfortunately, due to the fact that I have a child, that I sign up subscriptions for varying different, like, children's show programs or whatever here for her iPad, we then subsequently forget about, which ends up costing us a lot of money. But luckily, Rocket Money has saved us quite a number of times on that. It is a super easy service that I promise you is something that can actually help. And I'm not saying this by virtue of an ad. I'm saying this by virtue of, no, this is a genuine thing that I use and love. So if you want to both support my channel and simultaneously get something that can really help you in your life, then please, my friends, go to rocketmoney.com/ho. That is rocketmoney.com/HOE, rocketmoney.com/ho. Thank you, my friends, and enjoy the podcast. Myanmar's democratic transition under Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi would further curtail the region's role in drugs, with UN-backed crop substitution programs going and transforming the crimson poppy fields into fruit orchards and tea plantations, things that were, you know, legal. And yeah, they may not make as much money as illegal substances, but simultaneously, hey, there's way less risk involved. Sadly, though, for the people of Myanmar, this would not last, as for anyone who's seen any of my previous videos on this, they would understand what I'm about to say. In February of 2021, a coup d'etat that was executed by the country's military would seize power, and the country would descend into chaos. This would also then cause farmers to go back to planting fields of poppy, and the cultivation of the plant would more than double in 2022 alone. In just that 1 year, Myanmar jumped up the rankings to become the world's second largest producer of opium, producing nearly 25% of the world's supply. The number one supplier, you may wonder? Well, that is Afghanistan. Yes, which we will definitely be going into detail here in a future video, but I'll give you a little tidbit now. The crazy part about all this is that yes, Myanmar became the second biggest, but in 2023, the Taliban actually began to viciously crack down on opium production in Afghanistan, which slashed their opium exports by 95%. This is insane, and it let Myanmar retake the world's highest producer position in the absolute worst kind of contest that two countries could probably ever have. Like, I genuinely don't know how else it is that I could really judge or talk about that matter. The Golden Triangle was thus golden once again. But the things that I've talked about here are primarily centered around opium. There are other things that are produced. The Golden Triangle is also the world's single largest producer of methamphetamines. A June 2024 report by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime discovered 151 tons of methamphetamines seized in the region in 2022, including 144 million methamphetamine pills in Laos alone. This is a lot, but you may wonder, okay, well, how bad is that in comparison to previous years? Well, that is an over 800% rise over just the previous year, which is a lot. Altogether, the combined trade between meth and heroin in the Golden Triangle is estimated to be around $60 billion, with local production capacity claimed to be practically infinite. The Golden Triangle wasn't just golden now, it was platinum. Yes, my friends, the drug trade through the Golden Triangle was back in business big time. But that's not the only kind of illegal activities that were going on here, and we will get back to those later. So then, all of this that I've explained here so far, this is all just to really say that the Golden Triangle has a history of, well, complicated dealings, illegal practices, and criminal activity, even before any outside powers like the Chinese set foot in the area. So for those of you who are going to put something in the comment section saying that, oh, I am trying to say that China created this problem, no, it already existed. There are just elements within China that are drastically exploiting it. The question then, that a lot of you may have then, is how exactly does that come to play? How are the Chinese involved? Well, let's explain this. In the year 2007, as part of the Belt and Road Initiative, the Chinese developed the Golden Triangle Special Economic Zone in northern Laos, right across the Mekong River from both Myanmar and Thailand. Now, this zone was supposed to be developed in order to boost the economic situation for those in the region. But, no, the entire thing soon became a wretched hive of scum and villainy led by one man. That man who brokered the deal that created and essentially owned the entirety of the Golden Triangle SEZ, Zhao Wei. And when I go and talk about what this guy did, I'm going to need to provide a little bit of context on him in the first place. Zhao Wei was born on September 16th, 1952 in rural Heilongjiang province. This is China's most northeasterly province bordering Russia's Amur Oblast Federal Region, and the guy endured a lot. He was born into poverty, he endured the Cultural Revolution, which, mind you, took out a lot of people. But hey, he survived, and in the early 1990s in Macau, he actually built wealth and connections that would serve him well in the later years that followed. I mean, this is a guy who'd go on to make a fortune in casinos, and then he would go and move to Myanmar and start a new casino in the town of Mong, where he began to become more of a mob boss than just a casino owner. If you're wondering what it is that I mean, well, stories of gamblers ending up buried alive in the surrounding Burmese hills were commonplace. The loan sharks did not play games in Mong, and the lawlessness of the area was very commonly known. Which, on that note, it is here that Zhao would be accused of a number of different illegal activities, such as the fact that he was accused of dabbling in human trafficking here, where he would bring in thousands of women and girls to satiate the men of the region. Pretty much anything and everything was up for grabs if you were willing to pay for it, and one of the most prized things that you could possibly get is, well, a woman's first time. It was one of the most expensive services that you could actually pay for, and there was even a saying that developed in the region that said, and I quote, "Opening a virgin brings the best luck." For those that were here engaging in illegal trades in order to try and make their fortune, luck was something that they really needed. Anyway, you may then wonder how it is that any of this was financed. How was any of this done? Well, a bank in Xishuangbanna Prefecture, China, was used to send tens of billions of yuan to Mong illegally each year. Which, yes, is pretty bad, but wait, it gets worse. After combing through the transactions, Beijing investigators who were looking at the matter found that various provincial officials throughout China had gambled away millions of yuan of public funds at the Mong casinos. Like, this was one of the prime targets that would be utilized for straight-up embezzlement. For anyone who remembers the video that I did on the Chinese economy and how the whole thing with infrastructure artificially inflates it and makes it out to be a kind of lie, yeah, this is one of those things that would be done. Anyway, the investigation. On July 11th, 2003, the Chinese military would conduct an operation called Blue Arrow, and they would seize the property and businesses of the 5 largest casino operators in the border town of Mong. The raid came as a complete surprise, and can you guess what one of the targets was? Blue Shield Casino, Zhao Wei's own. But what is absolutely amazing about this, or insane, or, well, some other adjective that I'm not really even sure how it is that I could begin to describe it. Suspicious, perhaps? Out of all the casinos in the town, his casino was one of 2 that were allowed to reopen by special permission of the Chinese government. It is really unclear if he sold his stakes in the Blue Shield or if he still owns it, but apparently at some point he got in good with the Chinese Communist Party by offering to negotiate with Laos for an upcoming project, China's Belt and Road Initiative. Now you can probably see where we're getting at here. If we jump ahead by about 15 years, in 2018, the US Treasury Department would declare Zhao Wei's business network a, quote, transnational criminal organization, and would sanction Zhao and 3 other individuals and companies across Laos, Thailand, and Hong Kong. As an interesting side note, Zhao Wei's Wikipedia page, if you go to it, has gangster written in the title to differentiate him from a Chinese actress of the same name, who, as far as we can tell, has nothing to do with the criminal underworld. But yeah, fun fact about that. Anyway, Zhao Wei is the chairman of the King's Romans Group, which in 2007 was granted a 99-year lease over what became known as the Golden Triangle Special Economic Zone, or GTSEZ, a gambling and tourism enclave in the remote corner of Laos. Now, to explain this, because it's a little bit confusing, China has these special economic zones set up all around the world. SEZs are business areas that are exempt from most national-level economic regulations, and often receive tax breaks and are governed by different labor laws. But this one that we're talking about here, this one is unique, because this one prefers to cater to one type of client predominantly, the Chinese high roller. To clarify what it is that I mean, the GTSEZ wants you to know, when you step into it, that you have stepped into Chinese territory. It runs on Beijing time, despite not being in the time zone. All signs and writings are in Mandarin. Most workers are Chinese nationals, and the Chinese yuan is the main currency. Chinese citizens who want to travel here only need to present their identity card, that's it, rather than their passport. This is an important distinction. But what about the features? Well, the crown jewel of the GTSEZ is the King's Romans Casino, owned by the Hong Kong-based Doc New Com Group. And can you guess then who owns and runs the controlling stake in that group? Yes, that's right, our old friend Zhao Wei. The group holds an 80% interest in the 11.6 square mile zone, while the Lao government holds the other 20% stake. And when we talk about this, my friends, in this region, for those with, well, unique tastes, we should say, anything can be found for sale in the GTSEZ. Behind the flash of gaudy casinos and tacky resorts, there's a steady flow of business that is being conducted involving human trafficking, drug smuggling, international scamming, and even the sale and consumption of endangered species. Yes, you heard me right, and allow me to explain further. For starters, once it is that you cross into the Golden Triangle SEZ, you are not under the jurisdiction of the Laotian authorities. Zhao made sure that as part of his 99-year deal that he also retained legal rights to the territory, including law enforcement. To patrol the area, Special Economic Zone units are composed of private security, and they answer to no one except Zhao Wei himself. In fact, they even have their own private prison, something that was built in 2022, so that they don't have to let Lao authorities into the zone for any reason. That's right, the Lao authorities have to ask permission before they step foot on their own land. This SEZ seems like it has almost entire diplomatic immunity. It's basically untouchable. And because of that, pretty much anything can go down. In an elaborately decorated Chinatown district behind the casino, Chinese night workers ply their trade in nightclubs and massage parlors, a practice that is illegal in both Laos and China. But cards advertising their service can be found scattered around town everywhere. Not even an open secret, it is just open, it's there. The authorities themselves can't or won't do anything about it. And really, the only authority that could overrule Zhao Wei in this region is the Chinese government itself, as they were the ones who installed him as a kind of vassal in charge of his own separate Chinese satellite fiefdom. This means that Zhao has been able over the years to make plenty of money for both himself, his company, and the Chinese government. His casino is widely regarded as one of the prime places to launder massive amounts of money in Asia, which is wild, and then the scammers come in. Yes, my friends, since roughly 2020, hundreds of thousands of people across Southeast Asia and beyond have been lured by fake job adverts into pig butchering scam centers. To explain what it is that means, this term stems from the fattening of a hog for slaughter. Whereas initially, victims were originally drawn from Chinese-speaking communities in Malaysia, Thailand, or Singapore, today people are being trafficked into the region from as far away as South America, East Africa, and even Western Europe. Other than being beaten, workers are subjected to intimate violence, and some have even had their organs forcibly harvested, according to Interpol. As Interpol Secretary General Jürgen Stock would say, quote, "What began as a regional crime threat has become a global human trafficking crisis. Aided by modern telecoms and far from law enforcement, it is now the world's unrivaled cybercrime hotspot. Here, armies of quote, dog pushers, as the lowly traffic scammers are known, orchestrate romance investment cons, crypto fraud, money laundering, and illegal gambling operations at over 1,000 scam prisons. Together, this generated around $75 billion over the past 4 years, according to one study. In 2022, pig butchering and other online cyber fraud cost Americans alone some $2.6 billion, according to the FBI, over double what it was in the previous year. But that's crazy, right? How exactly is it that this guy is managing to get this labor in the first place to do these things? Well, what Zhao's people typically do is they draw in their slave labor by putting out an ad on Facebook or some other social media app, offering high-paying casino or call center jobs in Myanmar. They then go and push these ads out into users in India, Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, and even China itself, really. This will eventually hook some kind of worker. But once that worker arrives in the zone, they will rack up debt to their employers for their travel expenses and training, and their bosses then set impossibly high sales quotas that are designed to make the workers fail. Their passports are then usually, quote, held for safekeeping by their captors in order to ensure that they're not able to flee and escape their debt. Some workers who have been caught in the scam have managed to escape, but at great personal risk, and oftentimes without help from really any kind of authorities. As part of one story, a young Malaysian woman would describe her experience of being trafficked by saying that instead of a casino in the city, she was driven over 18 hours through 700 miles of winding mountain roads to Myanmar's lawless northern region of Kho Kheng by the border with China. There, she was sequestered in what was effectively a 10-story concrete prison inside the provincial capital of Lao Cai, with around 200 other human trafficking victims from China, Taiwan, Malaysia, and elsewhere across Asia. The compound that I'm describing here is something that is typically fortified in order to ensure that the victims are not able to actually escape, including metal bars on windows and balconies of offices as well as dormitories. Meanwhile, armed guards with pistols, electric whips, and handcuffs are positioned at the compound entrance. Sleeping 8 to a cell, these people would be forced to conduct online scams for 17 hours each day, posing as attractive women, using photos gleaned from social media to dupe predominantly American victims out of as much cash as they can possibly get. According to this one woman's story, they set her to work immediately conducting romance scams predominantly targeting men in Texas and Washington, D.C. Armed with a laptop and 20 cell phones, she would concoct fake social media profiles to lure unsuspecting men into online relationships, and then convince them to invest in supposedly lucrative schemes. Another woman who escaped the call centers would say that they stole identities from rich-looking people on Instagram, and then applied artificial intelligence to use the same faces and sync voices when it was time for video calls. When these failed, sometimes due to lag caused by weak internet connections, or when the potential victim spotted the mouth not actually being synced with the voice, the workers were punished for their failures. Severely punished. And that is only describing the ones who failed by being caught. There were many others that just did not manage to meet the quotas that were demanded of them. Per one victim, those who did not meet their target of $1,000 every 3 days were subjected to beatings, electrocutions, and worse. As one woman would say, "I saw 3 people die. One coworker jumped from the roof, and 2 others were pushed." Which, my friends, this is absolutely insane. So when you all who are watching this get scammed, whether it's on Tinder, Snapchat, or by some random text messaging from someone asking if you are still coming to install their air conditioner, or then they ask you to invest in their uncle's cryptocurrency that gives back interest that only increases the more you deposit, yeah, that was probably these guys. I'm not even kidding. Which is absolutely terrible, but you can bet that the people who are conducting these scams, most of them do not enjoy that they are doing it. They are literally legions of people being forced to. Now, there are several drivers for this boom in call centers that have been effectively dubbed the, quote, scamdemic. The global pandemic would go and curtail the gang's traditional drug smuggling routes and casino-based money laundering racket schemes, which would force criminal enterprises to diversify at a time when lockdowns meant that people around the globe were spending more time online than ever. Adding to this, the rise of cryptocurrency would provide a virtually untraceable way of collecting and sharing loot. With Myanmar's civil war continuing to rage and a global economic slowdown, meaning no shortage of workers that were desperate to make a quick buck, it was just way too easy for these scammers to infest the SEZ. Now, that is not to say that absolutely nothing has been done in order to try and prevent any of this from happening. Following an August 9th, 2024 meeting between the governor of Bokeo province, high-ranking officials from the Lao Ministry of Public Security, and Zhao Wei, the chairman of the Golden Triangle SEZ, Lao authorities ordered all scam centers to be completely shut down by August 25th, according to state media reports and an official from the Public Security Ministry. Again, this all kind of depends on Zhao giving the order for his security forces to remove the scammers, which does not appear to have really happened. In fact, in the first half of 2024, as many as 400 call centers were operating in the Golden Triangle SEZ, which is up from 305 a year earlier. That is 400 call centers in a 12 square mile area. That is a lot. And efforts have actually been taken to try and combat them. In the last year or so, Lao and Chinese authorities have carried out 9 raids, arresting and deporting 1,389 scammers. This included 1,211 Chinese nationals, 145 Vietnamese, 16 Malaysians, 13 Ethiopians, and 4 Burmese. Which sounds great, but it is still pretty shady, because similar to Mexican government employees staying publicly silent about the cartels that ravage their country, Laotian government officials typically all choose to give statements to the press under a strict condition of anonymity because, well, they are afraid of reprisal from Zhao's forces. And so possibly, in part because of this, despite their efforts, the scammers still abound, and the trafficking continues. The workers that I'm talking about here are effectively sold between scam centers like human chattel. As an example of one of these stories, you have an individual called Chin Jian Hong, who quit his job selling snacks in East Malaysia's province of Sabah after he saw a job ad for an air conditioning serviceman in West Malaysia on Facebook. He would eagerly go and take the job, but upon arrival in July of 2022, Chin and his wife, Lim Jin Yu, were trafficked through Thailand to a casino complex by the Cambodian seaside resort town of Sihanoukville. With little technical knowledge and only rudimentary English, Chin says that they constantly fell short of their targets and were thus mercilessly punished with beatings and electrocution. Quote, "The stun baton was not only electric, it also had 2 sharp blades on its end. When it was used on us, it felt like we were being stabbed. They electrocuted us until our skin turned black and had a burnt smell." In total, Chin and Lim were sold to 5 different scam operations over 4 months in Cambodia. Each time they were traded, they would be ordered to shower and use makeup to cover up their wounds in order to fetch a better price for the next scam boss, who would subsequently repeat the cycle of violence and abuse before they were patched up and sold again. As Chin would recall, quote, "Towards the end, they were always hitting us. It was bad. They hit me until I was weak and could barely walk. The moment I was going to die, the international police came. Going into this further then, on a wider scale, the UNODC report estimates that there could be at least 100,000 victims of trafficking for forced criminality in one nation, Cambodia, alone. If accurate, the UNODC states, quote, "These estimates of trafficking for forced criminality in Southeast Asia would suggest that this is one of the largest coordinated trafficking of persons in history." Which is terrible, but wait, there's more. The Golden Triangle shops and hotels have become a haven for illegal wildlife products, according to recent surveys by WWF and Traffic, the Wildlife Trade Monitoring Network. Open-air markets sell animals, furs, horns, tusks, and anything else that comes from the animal itself. Restaurants will go and offer, quote, jungle menus, which include bear paw, python, and sautéed tiger meat. These animals are usually caged and available to be cooked upon request. Food can be washed down with hu gu ju, tiger bone wine, a widely advertised beverage in the area. The local zoo is allegedly used as a kind of farm in order to harvest tiger skin and bones, on top of tiger farms being scattered throughout the country being used for the same purpose. This is happening despite Laos having announced that it would phase out its tiger farms within a year from 2016. Yes, this is something that not many people are aware of, but tigers, both poached from the wild and captively farmed, which is not a thing you would expect to actually be farmed, they are favorites in the Golden Triangle. Nearly every single part of the tiger is on sale, either in the form of traditional medicine or as a decoration, tiger wine, or meat. It is everywhere. In addition to that, survey teams found almost every part of elephants on sale in the region, including elephant teeth, hair, bones, tails, trunks, and ivory. Even elephant skin was available for consumption in restaurants as a cure for stomach ailments. Chinese and Vietnamese tourists in the Golden Triangle would go and seek out pangolin meat, considered a delicacy, as well as pangolin scales, which are used in traditional medicine. Mind you, when I talk about this, international trade in all 8 species of pangolins, 4 being African and 4 being Asian, is prohibited under international law. Along with that, most rhino products in the Golden Triangle are believed to have been smuggled from Africa. African rhinos are being poached at a rate of around 3 per day to feed the demand for their horns in places such as Vietnam. Per local customs and medical knowledge, if you want to call it knowledge, the horns supposedly cure hangovers and fevers, which is weird because they are in fact made of the same material as human nails, with no actual medicinal value. Rhino horns are also bought as a kind of symbol of wealth in parts of Asia, particularly in Vietnam. Another example is that the Golden Triangle region is home to bear farms. So just like tiger farms, you have bear farms. This being a place where bile is extracted from species like the Asiatic black bear and the Malaysian sun bear, and this bile from their gallbladder is used in traditional medicine, and the bear's paws are used to make soup. Many of these bear farms likely house bears that have been illegally captured from the wild, as breeding them on such a large scale would be somewhat difficult. Another example, and I know that we are listing a lot of these here, the critically endangered helmeted hornbill is a bird that has a solid bill casque that is extremely prized in China, where carved casques are used as an ivory substitute. Chinese demand for these casques have led to a drastic decline in helmeted hornbill numbers. Even leopards have been found on sale, which aren't even a regional animal, much like the rhino. We're not even sure how it is that they got there, they're just, well, there. Which, on that note, it brings us to this next point. It seems that in recent years, there have been some attempts that have been made in Laos and online to try and control and reduce the wildlife trade, though it still remains alive and well today. Just like what I talked about before with the transition online to scam services, many of these wildlife sales simply moved online instead of being in the open air. The cages are still there with the endangered animals. It's just now you have to actually order them online. The question really becomes, why is it that nothing substantial has been done about this? Well, my friends, Zhao has high-ranking friends in the Laotian government. Senior officials had paid visits to the Special Economic Zone, including former President Chumale Sayason, who is pictured with Zhao in a King's Roman promotional magazine available in the casino lobby. Several ex-government officials also sit on its management committee. So yes, they are very well connected, but there's even more. In early October of 2020, a $50 million investment to build a port in the Laotian town of Ban Mom, directly north of the Golden Triangle Special Economic Zone, was made by Oceano Trading Seoul Company, a partner or front company of Zhao Wei and his organization. The Banbom port that we're talking about here has been already confirmed as a location that has been used for trafficking drugs and precursor chemicals into and out of drug production areas and special regions. So Zhao is surely planning to use it for even more illegal business in the future, and he has every reason to involve himself. I mean, after all, the GTSEZ is clearly a hotbed for crime. The amount of money and resources injected into the region to support this criminal activity completely outshines the rest of the Lao economy. By some estimates, the King's Romans Group investments in the GTSEZ account for more than 10% of the entire Lao GDP. Which is a lot, and as you can probably imagine, this is not necessarily well received. Locals do not appreciate the devaluation of Lao sovereignty. Although new roads and better infrastructure as a result of economic development might be appreciated, the downsides are simply too numerous to outweigh any potential benefits. Laos has always been considered kind of a little brother figure to China because they both have communist governments. But China is now leaning heavily into its SEZs. China's incursion into Laos sovereignty demonstrates a wider phenomenon in which China is expanding its sphere of influence, whether it is through formal foreign policy or through more informal trade relations. Chinese interests play a key role in the region. Although there have been some limited instances in which Chinese government officials would go and help rescue Chinese trafficking victims, oftentimes foreign policy is complicit with illicit actions of the King's Romans Group. Chinese state media actually goes and portrays Zhao Wei and his organization as a beacon of development in the region. This shows that the state government supports the expansion in the region despite the criminality alleged to be involved. Similar levels of state support for criminal actors in Myanmar are further evidence that the government puts economic development ahead of cracking down on foreign criminal networks. And as it stands, the GTSEZ is only set to get bigger. Those who run the zone want to be able to accommodate 200,000 people. They are planning to build resorts, golf courses, and a museum, per the GTSEZ website. You can actually go to this thing. They plan to have a restaurant row along the river and a street lined with bars nearby. There are even plans for a plastic surgery center. And according to the rumors circulating around, Zhao is becoming one of the top money launderers in the world through his casino. As it stands, this kind of activity seems to be becoming more and more common wherever it is that China sets up a kind of special economic zone. At the same time that Zhao was setting up King Romans, Huang Mingzhuang would spearhead the creation of Golden Bulletin City, a casino SEZ in Luang Namta province, just inside the Chinese border. Which, if you can imagine what we've already described under Zhao, Bulletin would rapidly descend into chaotic criminality. And in 2011, as murders, kidnapping, and scam increased against Chinese citizens, China had to actually step in and force the casinos to close. But Bulletin, which occupies an important strategic location in China's Belt and Road Initiative, that has now been given a second chance. It's the stop where the brand new China-Laos high-speed rail crosses the border, and it's getting a makeover as Bulletin's beautiful land-specific economic zone, with Huang's company, Hong Kong Fuk Hing Travel Entertainment Group, still being on board as a partner. One really then has to wonder here, in the end, is this the new pattern that we should be expecting with all of China's SEZs? Are they all effectively going to become little pieces of China, with mass corruption entailing in them? Is Zhao Wei just the first in a long line of vassal lords, each operating their own personal little diplomatic fiefdom? For answers to these and more questions, we're going to have to just simply wait and see. As for Zhao, well, we'll be watching his career with great interest. As the situation develops, should anything happen, of course, we will get back to you all here with an update. But my friends, that is going to be the end of today's video. Please do not forget to check out my Patreon, where we are currently running a series on the Vietnam War. If you want to subscribe and get ad-free episodes of my actual podcast, you can do so for as little as $1 a month. I appreciate all of you for watching and supporting. And if you could, I ask that you like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you, my friends, and I will see you all here next time. Goodbye, guys.